Okay, so for now, I'm going to show the effects. All effects are pooled by the pool FX pool, sorry. This FX pool will go inside the enemy pool and will look up all the enemies used, and they'll see what effects they have, what effects their weapons have, and what effects their ammunition have, and it will also check the player, and it will combine all of these effects and pool them. So I'm just, to make it easier, I'm just going to delete these ground enemies now, and let me just, for example, spawn this one, and I'll spawn some mines, and I'll add effects to them. So very quickly, let me, for example, modify this this enemy. I'm going to have to add to it inside first a sound and an effect. So to add a sound, I'm just going to pick one of the sounds. So I'm going to pick this explosion one and give it a volume. If you keep this volume at 0, you won't hear anything. And this is an enemy event trigger. So just to explain this concept, so every the player or the enemies, they have different actions that they take. So for example, you have, when it's activated, this is an event. When it's eliminated, an event. When it takes a hit, I would like the sound to have the sound once an enemy is eliminated. And you can add, for example, any number of sound effects and choose when they play. For now, we'll just have when it's eliminated. And inside the FX spawner, the same thing. I will add, when it's eliminated, I'm going to add an effect. There are a number of settings, which I'll just explain right now. So I'll go into the prefabs and inside VFX, and I'll choose explosions, which have already been set up. And I'll pick one explosion, for example, this one. And I'll show it. So now let me try this thing to show you. If I hit preview, I can't show anything inside the prefab menu. So I'll just go over here. You see that the preview effects are located elsewhere. I'll again go to the simple player and choose preview. Let me zoom in, and I can see how the explosion will look like. But just to explain this, a lot of these settings, so now you have by agent, which is probably the default thing that you will use. So it means that the effect will be spawned by the location of the agent, which is the enemy in this case. If I choose by playfield, it means that it will spawn according to the settings you input here. And if I choose by input, it will be here. This means, for example, if I set by input, it will be spawned at position 000, which is something we don't like. Let's say, for example, by agent, and it will offset by this value. Now, if you see the explosion is just on top of the player, let me move it on top of it so that let me hit preview. You'll see now that it has moved. If I change to this, it will show in a different preview. Let me put it back in. And this is the scale. I'm going to scale it by 2 and hit preview. As you notice, now it's big. And now we have an option called hide from preview. This is just in case you have multiple effects, 2 or 3, and they are becoming confusing. Let's keep it for 1. And again, this enemy event, the trigger, you can put anything. For example, you can make it when it takes hit, that you'll have an explosion, or when you have a health damage, or whatever. That's it. Let me delete the preview and apply my changes. And let me go to the mine and do the same thing. I'll add maybe different sound effects or more. So I'll add an explosion sound when it's eliminated. And I'm going to add this sound, laser 1, when detonation starts, because this is mine. And in the effect spawner, I'm going to add an explosion, the same way we've done a different one perhaps. around elimination, and we can't see it for some reason. Just 1 second. It's just too small. So I'm going again to the mine. But I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm just guessing this is the first frame of the explosion. And just the way I've done with the enemy before it, I'm just going to move it forward. And I'm going to show you another effect called flash. But just so that you can remember how you put it, you just go to Shmup boss, components, agents, effects, enemy, flash effects enemy. And I'm going to add this one as a target renderer, which means this one will be affected by the flash effect. And I'm going to add, for example, a red color once detonation starts, because again this is a mine, and we'll give it a time of 2. Let me apply and save. So when we destroy the enemy, you can see that there is already an explosion. Let's go to the mine. You see that the color now changed once we have fixed, and it have destroyed me. So just to recap, we have a pools and FX pool. We'll pool everything. Let me just hit play. You'll see here pooled effects. You'll see that the explosions are pooled. And this one will just automatically pool anything in you input. This one will through the component called FX spawner, and this one with activated with the event. And there are some extra effects component. For example, I've added the flash effects, and this can be applied to the player as well. Let me just apply it. Add component flash effects player, which is located from the Shmup boss FX player, and you pick yours. And I'm going here to, for example, input it. Let's have the target renderer. And let's choose something different. Let's make it on activate, so that you have a flash effect once the player is activated, a green color, and for 3 seconds. Let me apply. And you see, just to give you an idea on the different events you have. And let's, by the way, we're here, let me add some events, some player sounds. And elimination, let's add an explosion sound. And the same thing here, I can add an explosion for the player. I'll pick one from over here. Let me make it really big. Let's just preview it. And to place it on elimination. Let me now preview, delete. Apply, delete these previews, and save. Let me activate the collision for the simple one, so that it can deal collision damage. Let me make it give a 20. Let's make it take collision damage as well. And let's go to the player, and let's activate can take collision damage, and it will inflict some damage. So let me play. You see that the flash effects once it's activated, and I got exploded because the enemy now can inflict collision damage. In the next tutorial, I'll just look at some of the different effects now which are spawned by the FX pool. Now it was about the suffix and the FX spawner for the player and the enemy. There are a number of effects also for the munition which are used. And before that, let me show you very quickly an important aspect. For example, what's the difference between these the spawned effects? They have an animated effects eliminator added to them. So if I add, for example, this one, let's assume this one is the effect you want once this enemy is destroyed. I'm going to set it back to 0. So when this enemy is destroyed, I'm going to change the explosion effect. Let me go to demos, tutorials, prefabs, and drag and drop this one without adding any special components to it to see what's the difference. I'm going to add this one. Let me preview. So what happens that once that simple one enemy is destroyed, it should pop up this one. Let me play. Which it didn't because I forgot to apply. So let me just apply my changes. But what happens now is that this doesn't disappear. It's spawned and it continues to be spawned. So to despawn it, I'm going to add another element from Shmup boss, FX, eliminators, FX eliminator in this case because we don't have any animation, and let's despawn it after 2 seconds. And let me just remove this one. And it should disappear. Nice. And there is another component called the animated effects eliminator, which is exactly the same as the effects eliminator, instead that you don't have to input any wait time, it will just find the clip time for it. I'm going to put this one back into one of the VFX explosions. And we are done. If you see inside the prefabs VFX explosions, already they have been set up with an animated effects eliminator. If in any doubt, you just see the prefabs or the existing demos and it should solve everything. There are a number of weapon effects that we will show in the next tutorial.